We have shown that price elasticity varies from minus infinity to zero along linear demand curves. And it'll generally be true that for demand curves that we draw, price elasticity changes along the demand curve. But there are some demand curves where price elasticity remains constant along the demand curve, and we'll illustrate two examples here. We begin with a demand curve that's known as the unitary elastic demand curve, a demand curve where the price elasticity of demand is equal to -1 everywhere. Consider points A and B on this demand curve. At A, the price is 80 and the consumer consumes 10 units, for an overall spending level of 800. At B, the price is 40 and the consumer consumes 20, for an overall spending, again, of $800. When price falls to 20, the consumer's consumption increases to 40, with overall spending again equal to 800. And when price drops to 10, quantity goes to 80, for an overall spending once again of 800. No matter where we start on this demand curve, an increase in price will lead to exactly the change in quantity required for overall spending to remain unchanged. Starting at C, for instance, a doubling of the price causes a drop in the quantity, such that the shaded blue area that represents the decreased spending from the drop in quantity is exactly offset by the shaded magenta area that represents the increased spending from the higher price on those units that are still bought. In graph 18.4, we concluded that spending remains unchanged as price changes when the price elasticity of demand is equal to -1. Thus here, we have a demand curve where price elasticity is equal to -1 everywhere. Next, consider the demand curve in panel B. When price increases from 20 to 40, and we're taken from point C to point B, it is now no longer the case that the decrease in spending that happens from the decrease in quantity is exactly offset by the increase in spending from the higher price that we have to pay on the goods that we still buy. Thus, this is not a unitary price elastic demand curve. It turns out, however, that the ratio of the magenta to the blue area is always the same along this demand curve, regardless of which point we start with and what we make the price increase. Thus, we have a demand curve that has the same price elasticity everywhere, with that price elasticity not being equal to -1. In fact, the price elasticity here is equal to -2. If you still harbored any doubts about whether price elasticities are the same as slopes of demand curves, those doubts should now be gone completely. Before, we've shown that a linear demand curve that has the same slope everywhere has different price elasticities everywhere. We've now shown two demand curves that have the same price elasticity everywhere, and those demand curves certainly have different slopes everywhere as well.